Hey y'all, what's up? It's Molly. Welcome back to another video. I have been reading so much this summer, from being at the beach to now moving into my apartment and having some free time before I start working. I really have been able to dive into so many books that I have been absolutely loving. So I'm giving y'all my top reads of summer 2023. I have a huge stack of books right here, and then I also have read some on my Kindle that I will also be talking about with you guys and sharing with you guys. If you did not know, I do have a Bookstagram now, so follow me on there. I'll put the username on the screen, and on that Instagram page you can get an access to my Goodreads to see all my reviews and what I'm reading in real time. So if y'all are interested, you should totally check that out because it'll be constantly updated. It is being constantly updated, and it's just been a really fun creative outlet for me to talk about all the books that I have been loving lately. So just wanted to plug that in there real quick before we get into the video. Most of these books are fantasy. I have some romance. I have a couple of thrillers in here as well. So it's definitely a very well-rounded top reads video for you guys, and I'll talk a little bit about each book, the ratings I gave each book, and everything like that. So let's jump right into it. First two books I want to talk to you guys about are a series. The first one is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, and the second one is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King. I gave both of these books 5 stars, and these are such an amazing fantasy read. If you want something with a little bit of romance, some action, a little bit of sprinkle of everything, I feel like you get everything in these books, and I truly could not put these down while I was reading them. The main character in these books is Oriah, and she is adopted by a vampire king, and she is a mortal, and so she's just trying to train and be tough enough to kind of withstand all of the immortals that she is facing in the Kajari, which is kind of like a Hunger Games vibe, but she's entering this tournament to try to win, and she ends up forming an alliance with a mysterious rival who, it's kind of like an enemies to lovers a little bit trope, which you can never get enough of, I feel like, and obviously it evolves as you go into the second book, and these books are just so incredible. There's definitely a lot of plot twists that keep you wanting to read more, which I also really loved. So like I said, I gave both of these 5 stars. I will definitely be reading these again very, very soon, but I wanted to plug these because these were the first series read of the summer, and I was obsessed, so I knew the summer was going to end up well. The next book I read on my Kindle, and that was The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This book was about a woman named Hannah who is a bodyguard, and she gets assigned to be on the detail of a superstar actor named Jack, and this is just one of those books where, you know, someone is very dedicated to their job and they don't really want to do anything to jeopardize it. They're always very work oriented. They're not very relationship oriented. But obviously there are some plot twists here and there that kind of bring this into a beautiful love story, and I gave this 4 stars. I really like the style of writing. It was very easy to connect with the characters and really follow it easily. I read it very quickly as well. It wasn't definitely anything that was hard to get through, which was always good. Sometimes with romance books, if there's not a very good plot to keep me going through the book, it tends to take me a little bit longer to get through it just because I'm not as interested, but this one definitely did not take very long, which is always good. So another really amazing romance read that I feel like no one has had anything bad to say about this book is Happy Place by Emily Henry. I have loved her other books that are very popular, like Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation, but this one is definitely my favorite book that she has ever come out with. I was so emotionally invested into this story, and it takes a lot for me to emotionally react, crying and things like that, but I was sobbing reading this book. Obviously I gave this 5 stars. When a book makes me react like that, I have to give it 5 stars, and obviously it was just amazing inside and out. This book follows Harriet and Wynn, who are a couple that met in college, and everyone just saw them as this picture perfect couple that everyone aspired to be like, but they broke up 6 months ago, and they didn't tell any of their friends, and when they went on a trip with their group of friends from college, they kind of had to pretend that everything was fine until obviously eventually, spoiler, it comes out, and they kind of deal with the repercussions and navigate through, why their relationship deteriorated. They're also really trying to deny their feelings for each other and their continued attraction for each other, which was what really compelled me to keep reading, because it was so frustrating. You wanted to scream at them, being like, it's obvious y'all are meant for each other, but you're too stubborn to see it at the moment. So this was such an amazing book, such a good beach read. I feel like I really connected with the characters, and the way the characters were portrayed was very relatable too, which was really amazing. So 5-star read by Emily Henry, my favorite book she has ever come out with. I feel like everyone has been talking about Fourth Wing, so I feel like I really don't have to go that much into detail about this book, but I will say which I feel like is not an unpopular opinion. This is my favorite book I've read in like 2 years. I'm obsessed with this book. If you know me, you know all the Sarah J Maas books, the ACOTAR series, Throne of Glass, Crescent City. Those have always been my favorite books I've ever read. This one is definitely up there. It gives very similar vibes while still being uniquely its own. It has romance, it has action, it has a little bit of smut in there if you're into that. It just has a little bit of everything that anyone could ever want. And this was if I could give this 10 stars, I genuinely would. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. This book follows Violet Sorangel, I think is how you say it. That's how I said it in my head the whole time. Was supposed to enter the scribe quadrant. That was, her calling. That was where she felt most comfortable, most safe. Her mother is the commanding general, and she's a very tough, loving mother, and she wanted Violet to join the Dragon Riders. And it follows almost like a competition in a sense. It kind of gave me Divergent vibes, where it was like you chose the quadrant you wanted to be in, but you didn't necessarily belong in that quadrant, in the Dragon quadrant specifically, because of how grueling and how physically taxing it is. And obviously they are the Dragon Riders, so they have to bond with dragons, and some people don't get bonded with because it's the dragon's choice who they bond with. There's a little bit of romance, a little bit of like a love triangle moment as well, which is always very fun to read and navigate through. And I really connected with her and her romance that eventually evolves throughout the story. So incredible. The second book comes out in November, and I really don't know if I can wait that long, honestly. Like, this book has me in a chokehold. I think about it at least 3 times a day. Like, it's obsessed. Anytime someone tells me, what should I read next? Fourth Wing, Fourth Wing, Fourth Wing, Fourth Wing. So incredible. 5 stars. I'm obsessed with this book. It's my baby. A moment for a 5-star thriller read, A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham. Read it on my Kindle. I flew through this book, you guys. It had me in such a chokehold, and there was such amazing plot twists I literally never could have saw coming. I thought I knew what was going to happen in this book, and then it just did a complete 360 and was like, you are so wrong. So this book is about a girl named Chloe Davis, who, when she was a young girl, there was a string of murders in her town of young girls similar to her age. Turns out that murderer that was convicted was her father. So then this book jumps 20 years later, where Chloe is a psychologist, and she really is still trying to navigate through the trauma that her father put her through and all the experiences that she had endured during that time, and kind of having to grapple with the fact that her father was a serial killer. But then in that flash forward 20 years later, a local girl goes missing, and she feels the connections brewing between the similar habits and the similar crime scenes, I guess, of her father's killings and this current killer. And so she's basically trying to figure out what is going on and why it is also similar. So I'm obsessed with it. I would read it again. It was so good, even though I know what happened, but I would literally read it again because it was so interesting, so good. Like I said, gave this 5 out of 5. I was obsessed. Literally so good. Like, I still think about that book too, honestly. A lot of these books I have an emotional attachment to. I feel like I've been very, very good about the books I've selected to read over the summer. There have been very, very few that have disappointed me, honestly. My feet are falling asleep. Sorry, y'all, I might be lower. I had to sit down. My feet were freaking killing me. Book number 5 of the From Blood and Ash series, A Soul of Ash and Blood. I gave this book 4 stars, and I really, really love this book, and I love this series as a whole. There is a little bit of romance, action, fantasy. It's all conjoined into one, like a lot of the books that I tend to really love and gravitate towards. So I was very excited to continue the From Blood and Ash series with this book. This book gave me Midnight Sun Twilight vibes just because it goes back to the beginning and goes to the male point of view. So like Midnight Sun went to Edward, this went to Cass, and it was basically, there was a plot involvement in the beginning, which I don't want to spoil, but then he goes back in time and it's kind of retelling the story when Cass met Poppy, which I really liked hearing a little bit of his side. And I feel like it also really evolved Cass and Kieran's relationship a lot more, which I was always very curious about because I felt like it evolved very quickly in the series, but then going back, I feel like it makes a lot more sense now, which I really like. Like I said, I gave this 4 stars just because there weren't a lot of plot involvements in it. I'm obviously very excited still to continue with the series in the next book, but I felt a little bit stagnant from the first chapter to the last chapter were the 2 big points that I was kind of like, okay, I'm really into this. And then in the middle, it kind of just fell flat a little bit. I finished this book the other day and I had to include it just because of how much I loved it. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I gave this 4 stars as well. This one was very, very interesting. So I heard about it on TikTok and it was like, fantasy read. If you want a fantasy read, you got to read this, whatever. So I bought the book. I get it. And it kind of gave like historical fiction vibes. Like, it didn't really go into a lot of fantasy elements within the main characters of the book, but it was like the setting and like surrounding them was more of the fantasy aspect, I guess. So basically the setting that's fantasy is there are gods warring again in this realm that this book is set in. But 18-year-old Iris is a journalist who competes with Roman Kit, who is her rival at this newspaper, and eventually they decide to go to the front lines of the war that is going on, and Iris's brother is I can't speak today, is fighting in this war. Her mother is simultaneously battling addiction. So there's a lot going on, but it's a little bit of an enemies to lovers trope, which, as I said before, you can't get enough of. And there were like little bits and pieces of this book that like gave you that romance, and you were just like, you had to like cling to them for dear life. It was a very subtle, slow moving romance, but then once it evolved, I felt like it was so addicting, and I was so in love with the two of them together. So like I said, I gave this 4 stars, and the ending, the second book has to come out because I'm dying right now. Another Kindle thriller read, What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. This was a 4-star read for me, and this was one of the books that I had seen on like the Book of the Month ads, and I was like, okay, well, if they're offering it on Book of the Month, it's probably pretty good, so I should check it out. So I downloaded it on my Kindle. This book follows Naomi Shaw, who had 2 best friends named Cassidy and Olivia, and they were very much into fantasy, gods, the idea of sacrifice, witches, magic. They believed in all of those things. When they were younger, Naomi was attacked in the woods by a later then convicted serial killer who, once they put him away after she was attacked, they realized he had also murdered 6 other women. Decades later, which is obviously where this plot develops, they jump forward. Naomi starts kind of questioning, why did I believe my friend said this was who did these murders and this was the person who attacked me, and it kind of involves her kind of unraveling the truth about what really happened. Like I said, I gave this 4 stars. I loved it. It was so interesting, so good. I love the like serial killer murder kind of going forward, but then unraveling the truth, and maybe it wasn't what everyone necessarily expected it to be. The last book is the most recent read I actually have finished, but I had to include it in this book in this video because it was so incredible. One Italian Summer by Rebecca Surley. I gave this 4 stars, and it wasn't necessarily a very long read, but I loved the topic of grief and navigating maybe a romance that maybe isn't feeling the same level of spark it used to be, and different things like that. I felt like they made the main character, Katie, very relatable and approachable, and her mother suddenly dies, which is not a spoiler, I swear. Her mother dies suddenly, and her mother were best friends. They always said they were each other's true loves, and they had planned a trip to Italy, and Katie decides to take this trip on her own. It involves a little bit of magic, like it kind of gives an odd twist, kind of feeling like you're in a dream almost, the way like the plot navigated, and the way that she just was very vulnerable with her thoughts and feelings toward her husband and toward her family. And when she went on this trip, she really found herself and found her voice and made a lot of discoveries that maybe she didn't expect to find, which I thought was really amazing. So 4 stars for this book. It was such a good book, and I have always wanted to go to Positano and the Italian coast. I literally have a picture of it on my wall, as you guys have probably seen if you have been watching my videos lately. So, okay, y'all, that is it for my top reads of summer 2023. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, give this video a big thumbs up. Do not forget to follow my Bookstagram. I'll put it on the screen. My main Instagram will be linked in the description, as well as my Goodreads you can find on my Bookstagram page. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you next time. Bye, y'all.